let us into the realms of football, which are otherwise known here in Aotearoa and the nichecache as the Forest of the Woodsman. And because he did what he does best, which is bang home a penalty for Nottingham Forest. Break down Chris Wood's excellence from the penalty spot and offer some context around what he's doing for Nottingham Forest at the moment.
Yeah, third goal of the season for him in just the fifth game. Nottingham Forest, who were pretty deep in a relegation battle last season, they are undefeated through 5 weeks of the Premier League season, which is pretty crazy. Like it's not the craziest flying Kiwis turnaround because Liberato Cacace has an even better one because his Empoli team last year, they lost their first 5 games in a row, lost all 5 of them and didn't score a single goal in any of those matches. They're also undefeated after 5 weeks of the Italian season. Difference is that Chris Wood's scoring goals in 3 out of 5 games for Nottingham Forest, whereas Liberato Cacace is coming off the bench in all 5 games. Well, he's been on the bench in all 5 games, but he actually didn't play at all last week when they drew 0-0 with Juventus, which is another crazy result. Like they've already beaten Roma and drawn with Juventus during this turnaround. So, but he did get a little stint off the bench this week, Cacace, which was. I mention this because I mention it because the parallel with Chris Wood and Nottingham Forest just having completely contrasting starts to the season this year compared to last year. But also, weird thing with Cacace on the weekend is they subbed him on, but they didn't sub him on for the left back who he's usually vying for minutes with. They actually threw him on 2-0 up against Cagliari there near the end of quarter of an hour to go, a little bit more than that. They threw him on as a left winger. So we saw him in preseason, well, not preseason, in the first game of the season, which was a Coppa Italia early round game. He played as a centre back in a back 3. That was a little bit of a new one, but we haven't seen that again since then. However, we saw Liberato Cacace on the weekend as a winger. He actually had a goal disallowed too. He managed to put a header over the line, which the defender cleared, but it was too deep in the thing. However, there was a pretty obvious offside earlier on in the build-up, so no one really celebrated. They kind of knew it was coming back, but. As far as I can tell, that's the third goal that Liberato Cacace has had disallowed since he moved to Europe, and he hasn't scored a real one. So he's out there battling, waiting for that moment to actually. He's scored a few, but none of them have actually counted yet since he left the Wellington Phoenix. Chris Wood doesn't have that problem. Chris Wood scores goals every couple of weeks, and he's been really good to start the season for Nottingham Forest. He started every game, but also. He's especially ruthless from the penalty spot because the last time he missed a penalty, and I'm talking for club, I'm talking for country, I'm talking in normal games, and I'm talking in penalty shootouts as well. The last time he missed a penalty was in April 2016. He was still playing for Leeds. That was before his big breakout season. The next season was when he got Golden Boot in the Championship, and that led to his move to Burnley, and then he's been in the Premier League ever since, and the rest is history. He hasn't missed a penalty in any of that time. He's only missed 3 in his entire career, I think. Might be 4 if we're including shootouts, I think. But he's scored 28 in a row, 21 in a row in terms of just normal penalties, but also 7 in shootouts to take it out to 28 in a row if you count those. And credit here to Dale Warburton from the Yellow Fever because he spotted this on Twitter when I put up the gif of Chris Wood scoring the penalty. If you look in the background, Morgan Gibbs-White starts celebrating before Woods even kicked the ball. Like he's just, and it's not just like a psych out try to celebrate or wave your arms around, distract the goalkeeper or anything, because he doesn't change his reaction at all when the ball hits the back of the net. It's just like he was out of sync. He started celebrating a few seconds earlier. There's no change in focus or stance or anything. He just knew that ball was going to go in. And I guess because he probably practices penalties alongside Chris Wood and knows exactly how good he is from the spot, completely ruthless. He's never missed one for the national team as far as I can figure out. And yeah, they had a 1-1 draw against Brighton and Chris Wood scored. So it was all lovely stuff. This is actually the first time he's taken a penalty for Nottingham Forest, though. Just hasn't, as good as he is, he hasn't had that many opportunities lately. Forest just haven't been winning pens, and when they have, he's not been the guy to take them, or he's been off the pitch or whatever. They actually had a penalty shootout in the League Cup earlier this season. He'd already been subbed off by then, though, so he didn't get to partake. So this was a nice and well, we don't really need an emphatic reminder, but this was that for Chris Wood with his penalty abilities. Mostly it was just an opportunity to update the numbers and say it's now 28 in a row instead of 27 in a row, because it's been a little while. The previous time he took a penalty was against Congo for the All Whites, which was the last minute equalizer. Obviously, he scored that one as well. He's just he just doesn't miss. I mean, one day he'll probably miss, so I don't want to jinx him or anything like that, but right now he doesn't miss. And so until he does, we've got to savor this big old streak.
I wonder if Nottingham Forest fans know that they've got like a penalty taking legend in their team. Because they probably
don't.
They don't know about the All Whites history, and they wouldn't really know too much about the previous teams he played, Burnley, Newcastle, those teams.
Yeah, and even Leeds and beyond that, Leicester, he took some penalties for them. That's the thing is, I think even All Whites fans might not necessarily, I mean, you obviously, if the All Whites win a penalty, every casual knows Chris Wood's going to take it if he's on the field because he's the goal scorer, right? And he's the record goal scorer for the country. But I don't necessarily know that even All Whites fans would be aware of just how, unless they've been reading the Niche of course, just how incredible his streak of penalty success has been, because, as you say, he's done it for so many different teams. Even when I talk about the national team, that includes, there was a shootout at the previous Olympics, the 2021 Olympics. He scored in the shootout against Japan. Yeah, there's instances like this. He's just done it, which I think, if anything, adds to the legend of it, because these are all different environments, different situations. He scored penalties against Fiji. He scored penalties against it was Brighton and Hove Albion on the weekend. It's at the Olympics and the Premier League and the lower tiers in England. Just wherever he's gone, whenever he's been asked to step up and take penalties, he scores them. At least since 2016 he has. Because I remember that one that he missed, and it was a bit of a comical one because he blasted it a mile over the bar. And I think he might have been dragged for that a little bit. So he was like, resolution, never going to miss another one. And he hasn't since.
Obviously, my mind isn't full of Chris Wood penalties, but I can't remember seeing one go in the top corner since you started really tapping into it. Seems like if you blast one over the top bar, you might be going low a few times after that.
I think he generally does, but I've also seen him go left, right, down the middle. He does mix it up. He's not just one of those guys who has the one type of penalty. This is the one that he takes until they figure it out, and then he has to adjust. He obviously practices it. There's no way he's just this naturally good at it. I think he's just immensely well prepared for penalties. Unfortunately, when he played for Burnley, they had a long streak where they were the only team one season who never won a penalty, and Nottingham Forest haven't been getting enough of them. So maybe if he played for I don't know, if he played for Manchester City or Arsenal or Liverpool or something at the moment, we'd have heard a lot more about it because he'd be taking a lot more penalties.
So we don't have any National League football, contrary to popular belief,
not yet anyway.
/ my belief. And I don't think there's any Wellington, Phoenix, Auckland FC news that we need to touch on. So I might just roll through some more Flying Kiwis, throw them at you and see what you can conjure up. We had debuts for a few players. Indiah-Paige Riley at Crystal Palace, Elijah Just in Austria, St. Polten, Kate Taylor Dijon FCO in France, Grace Wisniewski at Lexington SC in the USA. What did you make of those debuts?
You ended on a question mark there, or yes.
Well, I will add, because we do have, you've got here in our newsletter, you've got Sarpreet Singh. He still seems to be out injured for UD Lieria. Finn Sermon's just staying on the bench for Portland, and Millie Clegg's just staying on the bench for Racing Louisville. So those are still coming up as well. But there are some players who've played their first games at new clubs. I'm just not sure how I wanted to throw it at you, but I'll just let you go take off.
There's a few others as well. Like along with Millie Clegg, there's three other players from the Under-20 World Cup. Chiara Boselli, who's at Sampdoria, top flight in Italy. Olivia Page at Sheffield United, second division in England, and Suya Herring at Turbine Potsdam, top division in Germany. So there's some serious leagues there where these players are all come back, and Millie Clegg, top division in America, come back from the Under-20 World Cup and are hoping to get some. Most of those European seasons have only just started. The American one is nearing its end. So I don't know. I mean, I'd really like it if they'd give Millie Clegg a debut sooner rather than later, but I don't know if that's necessarily something that's on the immediate cards as Racing Louisville challenge for trying to get into the playoffs. Similar story with Finn Sermon as well, but I do have some quotes in the Flying Kiwis wrap this week from Phil Neville, his coach, specifically saying, we hope to get Finn Sermon some minutes before the season is over. So he's on record. He's saying it's difficult because they got a lot of centre backs, and he's a bit more of the future idea of a centre back rather than the present idea of a centre back at the clubs. But he's on record as saying he wants to get him some game time. So hopefully that does happen. As the ones who did get game time, like Elijah Just, his one was his situation is a little weird because I think we've probably discussed this, how he went on loan, but loan probably leading to a permanent move to a second division club in Austria that doesn't seem likely that it's going to get promoted, that actually had not won any of their first 5 games. So it's a bit of a strange move, sideways at best, arguably even down from second division in Denmark. And he didn't do a whole lot off the bench on debut, but he was kind of their lucky charm because I said they hadn't won any of their 5 games. Well, they were 0-0 against whoever it was that they were playing this week. 0-0 after about 65 minutes. Elijah Just gets subbed on. Before he's touched the ball, they're 2-0 up and the opposition's got a red card. So the red card led to a free kick. They scored the free kick and then they scored straight after that as well. He still hadn't touched the ball and his team had scored twice and got the other team down to 10. There was the goalkeeper rushing out and just dropped his shoulder on a striker, and you're not allowed to do that. So lucky charm, Elijah Just helped his team to their first victory of the season without even having to really do much. He kind of played a bit on the right wing, bit on the left wing. Grace Wisniewski's debut was pretty cool for Lexington SC. They lost. They've not been great to start the season. She didn't play their first 3 games, but she's back now, having sort of, done the last phases of her recovery from her ACL injury. Came on in central midfield, defensive-minded midfield position, but with room to push forward because they were chasing goals. So that made everything quite transitional and a little bit chaotic. And most important thing to say about that is she was jumping into tackles like the Grace Wisniewski everyone remembers. No hesitation because of the long-term knee injury. Her first game since last November. Doesn't matter. 10 months later, she's just jumping around and wrecking folks. Kate Taylor's one was pretty interesting. Her debut in France because she was playing centre back, and she's always been a centre back up until the last 12 months where she suddenly became one of the A-League's better defensive midfielders, and then she's playing a lot of midfield for the Football Ferns as well. And now she's back to centre back in France, which I don't know. I always got the feeling when she started playing there for the national team, it changed the situation a bit. But definitely when she started playing for the Phoenix, it sort of felt like this is a bit of a filling a need for the Phoenix rather than saying Kate Taylor is a long-term midfielder. And I kind of felt like this is something which it's a developmental step. Like you play in the midfield, you got to play with a bit more 360-degree awareness than you do at centre back. You got to your touch has got to be better under pressure. You got less time on the ball. You got to make more passes from tricky spots. I kind of just felt like that was just going to level her up to where she goes over to play in Europe, as already had felt inevitable, and then those skills become really helpful playing centre back at a higher level, which is what's happened. But we'll see what that looks like for the Football Ferns, because I think she's still someone who gets into the team a lot. She might be a first 11 centre midfielder, but she probably wouldn't be a first 11 centre back. But she's playing centre back at a pretty high level now in France. So, but we'll let her season. She's played 1 game, so we'll let her season unfold. Solid enough performance there for a team that did try to keep a lot of ball, did try to build up from the back. So lots of touches, lots of passes. Most of them were good. probably needs to up the pass rate overall. There was one where they conceded a chance because she passed it to a striker, but that was a lone incident within a 90-minute performance. And who was the other one? Who was the other debutant? Who else were we talking about?
We had Kate Taylor, Wisniewski, Elijah Just, and Indiah-Paige Riley at Crystal
Indiah-Riley.
Palace.
That's the one. Yeah, so that was cool because it's the top division in England. But there's really nothing to say other than that. She went straight into the Crystal Palace starting lineup. She played about 75 minutes as their right midfielder, right wing, and mostly just had to defend because Crystal Palace in their first game in the WSL after getting promoted got thrashed 4-0 by Spurs, who are sort of a mid-table WSL team as well. So they'll face much tougher games than that, and they got a rude awakening. So great to see Indiah-Riley straight in there. That was awesome. But the team performance needs a bit of work. So, but it was their first game at that level, so it was always going to be a bit of a tough one. But we did get CJ Bott also, who's definitely not on debut for Leicester City. First couple, which I think the third season now over there, something like that. And she was awesome for Leicester City. Like she was so good that I went and clipped a bunch of things of her doing defensive acts and chucked it up as a highlight clip because she's just so much fun to watch play at that level because she's up against some of the best wingers in the world and she's just like dropping shoulders and barging them over and just physically wrecking them. So great start to the season from CJ Bott there. Annalise is the other player in the WSL. She's at Aston Villa, but she didn't play this weekend. Sounds like she'll probably be the backup again at Aston Villa to the third season in a row for a third different goalkeeper, which is pretty annoying, but it's kind of irrelevant at the moment because she's out injured. She missed the last couple of weeks of preseason, wasn't fit for their first game of the season. So hopefully that's not too long of a thing because they will have, even if she's not the starter in the league, they will have cup games coming up, which she's likely to play instead. So I want to be fresh for those ones, you know.
How did the Rangers, I assume it's Hearts game, finish up with Vic Esson? Because you did clip out a fantastic save from Vic Esson. How did that game end up?
Rangers won 2-0.
Bang.
They've won all 7 games this season. They continue their perfect record in domestic footy. And yeah, Vic Esson had a couple nice highlights. There was that one, and there was also a save later on, which was deflected. And so she kind of fumbled it and managed to sort of almost do a forward roll in recovering it, but saved it well enough. It was a tricky one because it bounced right in front of her off the deflection. But yeah, in particular, that save off the free kick in the first half, while it was still 0-0, was massive because Rangers haven't really been threatened at all in the domestic front. But this is their first game against one of the other kind of challenging teams. Hearts are maybe a step below Celtic and Glasgow City, but they're hanging around. Like they're better than anyone else in the league beyond the 3 kind of title contenders. And that was a tough game. And Esson had played 4 games so far out of the 7. They rotate a little bit. 4 games out of the previous 6. And 3 of those she kept a clean sheet, didn't have to make a save in any of them. The 4th appearance she made, she also didn't have to make a save, but she didn't keep a clean sheet because she made a big mistake where she went and make a clearance and she kicked it into the striker and it bounced over her and into the goal. So,
the old Ben Wayne.
Yeah, it's sort of, except it wasn't quite a falcon. It wasn't quite as cinematic as the Ben Wayne one was, but very similar to that. And yeah, a bit of a mistake, one she would have wanted to make amends for, and then she did make amends for it with a very good performance with a couple of the first saves of the season, and a 5th appearance in the SWPL, the Scottish Women's Premier League. Her 5th appearance, she finally had to make a save, and boy, did she make the saves, you know? Just did what needed to be done. So good stuff there.
So we got the Conway, we got the Ben Wayne.
Yeah.
The Wayne goal. Is it a good clean sheet for a goalkeeper if you don't touch the ball or you don't make a save?
I think it's a good clean sheet for the defense when the goalkeeper doesn't have to make a save. I don't think it really... the stat goes towards the goalkeeper, but you didn't really do anything. You know, you kind of just... Maybe, I mean, some more than others. If you listen closely to that clip of Esson making the free kick save, at the very start, you can hear her yelling at her teammates to organise them a bit. So you might get that from the goalie. You know, it's... They don't make any saves, but they're good in possession. They pass the ball around nicely. They organize things vocally. You know, can still be nicely involved, but Rangers were winning some of those games like 8-0, 10-0. So no, that wasn't really wasn't really one that had to reflect on her. That's why it was good to see her get a moment against Hearts.